In 2025, the hunt returns in a brutal new chapter of the Predator universe. Predator. Badlands throws us into a harsh, lawless landscape where survival is never guaranteed, and being human is the biggest weakness. As a mysterious alien hunter stalks the wastelands, a group of desperate survivors must outthink a creature that has never known defeat. This is not just a fight for survival. It's a test of who truly deserves to live. Welcome to Starz Recapped. On the distant world of Yaya Prime, a young and undersized predator named Dek undergoes a harsh training trial. Armed with advanced gear, he moves swiftly across the rugged terrain until he enters a dark cavern. His scanner suddenly alerts him. Someone familiar is close. Without hesitation, Dek launches a surprise strike, but his blade is stopped midair by his older brother, Quay. The two brothers clash inside the cave, steel ringing against steel. Quay mocks Dek throughout the fight, urging him to use his surroundings more wisely. They battle across narrow ledges and stone pillars until Quay finally traps Dek in a corner. Still, he refuses to finish him. When Dek stubbornly refuses to surrender, Quay cuts through the pillar beneath him. Dek plunges into the darkness, but barely survives by clinging to the rock wall. Fueled by anger, he climbs back up and attacks once more. Later, aboard their ship, Quay tells Dek that it's time to choose a target. Only by a successful hunt can he earn his place in the Aya clan. Dek makes a shocking choice. He wants to travel to Jenna, the infamous death planet, to hunt the legendary and supposedly unstoppable creature known as Kalisk. Even their father fears it, which is exactly why Dek wants the challenge. He's tired of being seen as weak. Quay strongly disagrees, but Dek refuses to back down. Just then, their father Njar returns. Dek greets him with a ritual offering of blood. But instead of pride, Njar reveals a dark truth. He had ordered Quay to kill Dek, believing him unworthy of the clan. Quay defies that order, insisting his brother deserved a chance. Enraged, Njar activates a restraining device to capture Dek and demands Quay finish the job. Instead, Quay secretly frees Dek and launches him toward the ship. When Njar opens fire, Quay raises his shield to protect his brother, sealing the ship so Dek cannot turn back. What follows is a brutal father-son confrontation. Quay disarms Njar with skill and speed. Even as Njar activates his camouflage, the fight turns savage. Quay loses an arm, is struck down, and crawls toward his fallen limb instead of his weapon. Calling him weak, Njar moves in for the kill. But with his final strength, Quay activates the ship's launch system, ensuring Dek's journey to Jenna. As the ship blasts off, the impact knocks Dek unconscious. Much later, Dek awakens to blaring alarms. His ship has been damaged by orbital debris and is spiraling uncontrollably toward Jenna. He ejects the cockpit, plunging through the violent sky at terrifying speed. A massive flying creature nearly collides with him, forcing Dek to deploy his shield just moments before crashing deep into the jungle. Bruised and furious, Dek roars into the wild. Regaining focus, he checks his weapons and prepares for the hunt. But the planet strikes first. Living vines suddenly ambush him, stealing one of his tools. As more vines attack, Dek fights desperately, cutting, shooting, and breaking free. No matter how many he destroys, more emerge, working together to drag him down. Thinking fast, Dek uses one vine as a path, sprinting along it to reach a high cliff where the creatures can't follow. From above, he finally sees Jenna in full view, beautiful, hostile, and deadly. After tending to his wounds near a river, Dek uses his scanner to locate a rare plant with explosive properties. He tests it by tossing away a strange worm-like organism, which detonates on impact. Armed with this knowledge, he continues deeper into the planet in search of Kalisk. Crossing an open field, he encounters strange red plants that hiss aggressively, forcing him to move with extreme caution. Suddenly, he hears a voice speaking an unfamiliar language. Looking up, Dek sees a figure trapped inside a massive nest. When communication fails, the figure switches to a universal translator, revealing herself as Thea, a synthetic android. Without warning, a massive Jenna vulture swoops into the area and hurls a stone toward the strange red plants. The impact triggers an instant reaction. The pods burst open in clouds of crimson mist, firing sharp spines in every direction. Deck barely avoids them. Thea quickly warns him. Those darts can shut down his body long enough for predators to feast. Thea offers to help, but Deck refuses. Ayaya hunts alone. She quickly figures out why he's here anyway, the legendary Kalisk. As the vulture continues its assault, more pods activate. This time, Deck isn't fast enough. Several needles strike him, and the poison begins to take hold. His vision blurs. Before collapsing, he tosses one of his blades toward Thea when she asks for a weapon. The vulture dives in, ready to claim its meal. But instead, Thea launches herself at the beast. Using Deck's blade, she takes it down in a savage struggle. The last thing Deck sees is Thea standing over him before everything goes dark. Moments later, Deck wakes to find himself alive. Thea has treated him using an antidote derived from the same poisonous plant. As he helps her up, Deck finally notices the truth. She's missing the lower half of her body. Calmly, Thea explains that she's a synthetic created by the Weyutani Corporation, designed for a world where humans can't survive. Deck shows no interest and simply drops her to the ground. Unfazed, Thea tells him that countless Yaya have come to hunt the Kalisk, and none have returned. She, however, survived. If Deck takes her along, she can lead him straight to the creature's lair. In return, she wants replacement legs. Deck hesitates, realizing the Kalisk is responsible for her condition. Still, he refuses, until Thea refers to herself as a tool. That changes everything. Now it doesn't feel like breaking the code. Deck agrees. As they move forward, Thea constantly talks, asking questions and making observations. At a river crossing, strange worm-like creatures begin spitting acid at them. To escape faster, Deck carries Thea on his back, but they soon reach a dead end. Seizing the moment, Thea shows her worth. She tosses a sticky fruit onto the ground, luring the creatures into feeding and stopping their attacks. Once safely across, Deck clears away thick vines and secures Thea to his back for easier travel. As night falls, they make camp. Deck activates a small light device, and Thea begins sharing her story. Her team arrived on Jenna 2 years earlier, and she spent nearly 2 weeks trapped in the vulture's nest. She had hoped another synthetic named Tessa would rescue her. According to Thea, their model is more emotionally sensitive than others. Deck dismisses sensitivity as a flaw. Thea disagrees, believing it allows her to better understand living creatures. She explains that she once lived confined to a laboratory, until the day Tessa took her outside to explore. Tragically, that same day marked their first encounter with the Kalisk. Back at the crew's newly established outpost, the story shifts to Tessa, who appears identical to Thea. She lies inside a repair chamber, badly damaged during the Kalisk's attack. Even while offline, her system repeatedly echoes Thea's name, replaying fragmented memories of the disaster. The station's AI intervenes, reminding her that her mission remains unchanged: track and eliminate the Kalisk. It also detects a Yaya presence on the planet and flags it as hostile. When Tessa finally regains full consciousness, she receives grim news. Theo has been captured by the Yaya. At dawn, Deck heads out to secure food. He soon spots a massive bone bison, a creature known to be one of the Kalisk's preferred meals. As Deck advances, he suddenly stops. Razor-sharp grass covers the entire field ahead, capable of slicing through flesh with ease. Just as he prepares to throw his blade, a small, unknown creature leaps from a nearby tree and lands beside them. Thea can't identify it. Deck roars to scare it off, but the creature boldly roars back. Instead of retreating, it charges after the fleeing bison, unharmed by the razor grass thanks to its thick hide. Enraged by the competition, Deck gives chase by leaping across tree branches. But the weight proves too much. One branch snaps, sending them plummeting. Deck reacts instantly, driving his blade into a tree trunk and stopping their fall just inches above the deadly grass. When the bison runs close, Deck leaps onto its back and strikes. The animal retaliates, slamming them into another tree and throwing them aside. The small creature rolls ahead, and a furious Deck grabs it, sparking a rough struggle that leaves Thea repeatedly crushed in the chaos. Despite its size, the creature is incredibly strong, but Deck eventually pins it by the throat. Before he can finish the fight, The bison charges back toward them. Deck hurls his sword with perfect timing, forcing the animal's jaws open as the blade slices straight through its body. Deck lets out a victorious roar, but the celebration is short-lived. Without warning, a thick tentacle wraps around Deck's leg and yanks him into the air. They've been caught by a massive lunabug, whose powerful tongue prevents Deck from activating his gear. As the creature prepares to devour them, the small companion leaps directly into its mouth. Its armored skin wedges between the lunabug's teeth, snapping them apart, screeching in agony. The lunabug spits them out and retreats, casually crossing the razor grass without injury. Enraged, Deck isn't finished. He fells a nearby tree to form a bridge and charges across the field. The lunabug captures the small creature again with its tongue, but this time, Deck lands directly on the monster's head. With one brutal strike, he drives his blade deep, tearing open a massive wound and finally killing the beast. Elsewhere on Jenna, Tessa leads a squad of synthetics through the hostile terrain, searching for any sign of Thea. Their trail leads them to Deck's abandoned drop pod. But before they can investigate further, the living vines attack. The crew responds instantly, unloading gunfire to hold the creatures back before switching to flamethrowers, reducing the vines to ash. As night falls, Deck and Thea set up camp once again. The small armored creature continues to trail them, carefully mimicking Deck's every movement after witnessing his hunt. Amused, Thea names the creature Bud, and Deck shares some of the cooked meat. During the quiet moment, Thea asks about Deck's past. Reluctantly, he speaks of his father and brother and the betrayal that tore his family apart. When Thea suggests he's grieving, Deck rejects the idea. Instead, he points out that Thea has a sister too, Tessa. The thought comforts her. Later that night, Tessa's team discovers Deck's wrecked ship, which crashed after his escape. Scattered around are several Yaya weapons that catch Tessa's attention, including a strange grenade that instantly freezes her hand when activated. At sunrise, Deck abruptly lifts Thea and marches on, leaving Bud behind. He insists that a true hunter works alone, and Thea doesn't break the rule because she's only a tool. As they travel, Thea talks about wolves, how strength isn't measured by kills, but by protecting the pack. Deck misunderstands completely, declaring that he'll be the leader because he'll slay more than anyone else. Near a river, they discover a massive fong belonging to the Kalisk, confirming they're close. Following the trail, they reach Thea's former base, now a field of destruction. Synthetic bodies lie everywhere. Among the wreckage, Thea finds her missing legs. Miraculously, the repair station still functions, allowing her to begin reattaching them, though the process will take time. Grateful, Thea thanks Deck, but then asks him to leave. She has activated a beacon to summon her crew, and they're hunting the Kalisk as well. She can't allow Deck to claim it. Deck refuses. To him, retreat means dishonor. He'd rather fall in battle than run. Suddenly, the Kalisk emerges from the smoke-filled ruins. Deck ignites spilled oil, creating a thick cloud to mask his movements. The beast slams him into the ground, cracking his blade, using scrap metal as a shield. Deck slides beneath the monster and slashes its underside. He follows up by throwing a smaller blade into its head and severing its tail, but the wounds seal almost instantly. The creature regenerates, proving why it's believed to be immortal. The Kalisk grabs Deck and hurls him into the repair machine, knocking Thea's legs to the floor. When it captures him again, Deck slices through its tongue and breaks free. The battle rages on, Deck narrowly dodging devastating strikes, while Thea struggles to recover her legs amid the chaos. At that critical moment, Thea spots a fallen weapon nearby and opens fire on the Kalisk, drawing its attention away from Deck. Seizing the opportunity, Deck hurls a chain into the creature's jaws and activates a powered winch. The mechanism tightens, yanking the massive beast backward. Deck grabs Thea's gun and unloads round after round. When the monster lashes out with its tail, Deck narrowly avoids the strike and slams a heavy storage door shut, pinning the creature in place. Using its own body as a ramp, Deck sprints upward and launches himself into the air, landing a clean strike that separates the creature's head from its body. For a brief moment, it seems over, but the victory doesn't last. The severed head reconnects, snapping back into place as if nothing happened. The Calisk pins Deck to the ground and inhales deeply. Whatever scent it detects causes it to hesitate, refusing to finish him. That pause is broken when Tessa suddenly arrives, throwing a cryo grenade that freezes both Deck and the Calisk in place. With the threat immobilized, she claims them as specimens. Later, Deck regains consciousness strapped to a metal table inside the crew's transport. Thea is suspended nearby, linked to a repair system, while Tessa has already accessed all her recorded data. Confused by Deck's survival, Tessa remarks that the Yaya normally eliminate their weak at birth. She coldly adds that serving her corporation should be considered an honor. Tessa reactivates Thea and congratulates her on capturing 2 valuable subjects. Then, without hesitation, she injects Deck with a painful experimental compound. Panicked, Thea tries to reason with her, calmly suggesting that Deck is biologically inferior and therefore useless for research. She proposes taking his weapons and releasing him instead. Tessa refuses, determined to extract something of value. She attaches 2 neural probes to Deck's head, sending waves of agony through his body. Desperate, Thea shuts down the machine and confronts Tessa, insisting they can be more than tools that blindly follow commands. She wants them to be sisters. Tessa's response is merciless. She admits she never returned to save Thea. Her true objective was always the Calisk. She openly supports the Yaya belief in eliminating the weak and dismisses Thea as defective. At that moment, Tessa receives an urgent transmission from Earth. She steps away to answer it, ordering one of the guards to seal Thea inside a containment box. The guard doesn't understand Yaya speech, so Deck signals Thea to improvise. Calmly, she tells the guard that one of Deck's devices is only a navigation tool. Curious, he activates it, and the device detonates, killing him instantly. Thea frees Deck just as alarms begin to blare. More guards rush in and open fire. Thinking fast, Thea unlocks the rear exit, and Deck escapes by diving into a raging waterfall below. Much later, Deck reaches the site of his crashed ship and treats his injuries. The ship is useless, and his weapons are gone. For a moment, he considers abandoning the planet, but then he looks at his brother's helmet and remembers the lesson he once ignored. The strongest wolf isn't the one who kills the most, but the one who protects the pack. With renewed purpose, Deck returns to the jungle. He begins turning the planet itself into an arsenal, collecting razor-sharp grass, harvesting toxic spikes from red plants, and capturing an acid-spitting worm using bait fruit. While preparing, he encounters Bud again and notices the scent of its saliva. Suddenly, everything makes sense. Bud is the Calisk's offspring, and Deck was spared earlier because he smelled like it. To disguise the creature, Deck coats Bud with his own scent. Next, he releases Thea's detached legs, allowing them to follow her signal back to where she's being held. At the enemy's new base, Deck reappears, now wearing bone bison armor. He ambushes a guard with acid, taking him down instantly. The legs move on their own, tracking Thea's signal as she lies suspended in a sealed container. When 2 guards move to stop them, Deck attacks with a whip crafted from vines and razor grass, dropping both enemies. Bud joins the fight as well, tearing through another guard in seconds. Together, Deck and Bud silently clear a path, eliminating every synthetic in their way so the legs can move uninterrupted. Meanwhile, Tessa reports to her superiors, confidently stating that they'll soon return with the Calisk. When asked about Deck, she coldly confirms that he's dead. Inside the base, Deck continues his assault, taking down multiple guards at once using his improvised weapons. In one lab, a guard corners him, so Deck shatters a containment chamber and releases a hostile vine specimen that kills the guard instead. The legs finally locate Thea's container. They leap onto a guard, snapping his neck before opening the box. Thea briefly awakens in relief, but hears approaching footsteps and quickly pretends to shut down again. The legs trip one guard, allowing Thea to spring into action, while the legs engage the second attacker. Even separated, the two have fight in perfect coordination. When a guard swings at the legs, they dodge aside, causing the blow to destroy the other synthetic restrained by Thea. She raises a sharp machine component, and the legs slam the final guard's head onto it, ending the fight. Not long after, Deck locates the container, but it's already empty. Before he can react, a guard sneaks up behind him. The threat ends instantly when Thea fires a shot, taking the guard down. Her body has finally been restored, and she's stunned to see Deck standing there. He admits he came back for her, just like a true wolf protecting his own. Thea wants to escape immediately, but Deck has another goal. He insists they must release the Calisk, so Bud can reunite with its mother. Suddenly, alarms echo through the base. Over the intercom, Tessa orders her team to accelerate the ship's launch with the Calisk on board. As she goes to investigate, a squad of soldiers corners Deck. Calmly, he activates the combustible worms, triggering a massive explosion that wipes out the entire group in seconds. Moments later, Tessa arrives wearing a heavy combat suit. She fires a powerful laser, taken from Deck's ship, destroying his acid worm. Using the suit, she smashes through structures and deploys a massive rotating saw. But Deck avoids every deadly strike. Inside the main ship, Thea reaches the Calisk's containment chamber, only to find it sealed. When a guard approaches, she fails to mimic Tessa's voice. Without hesitation, she slams his head into the cage and uses his eyes to unlock the system. Back at the lab, an attack sends Deck crashing inside. One of the suit's mechanical arms slams down but gets trapped by a moving vine. Deck tries to climb it, but Tessa violently throws him aside. He hides behind a large container as she lifts it, missing him completely. The truth is, Deck has already climbed on top of it. From above, Deck leaps onto the suit and attacks, but Tessa seals herself inside the cockpit. Just then, the Calisk bursts in and leaps onto the suit. Tessa activates the saw, stabbing the creature and lifting it off the ground. While she's distracted, Deck climbs onto the back of the suit and rips out cables, slowing it down. Tessa throws a freezing grenade at the Calisk, but Deck strikes it mid-air with a metal rod, redirecting it onto the suit's arm. The ice forces the suit to release the beast. The Calisk tears the saw from its body and retaliates, ripping the suit apart. When the upper half crashes down, the Calisk devours Tessa and roars in triumph. Deck reunites with the others as they watch the Calisk gently check on its child. The moment is peaceful and powerful. Inspired, Deck steps forward and respectfully presses his forehead against the creature's, honoring it as an equal. Suddenly, the Calisk explodes, triggered by a hidden ice grenade. Tessa emerges from the wreckage, still alive, and lunges toward Thea. But Deck strikes from behind, driving his blade into her and ending her for good. He retrieves his stolen device, and Bud finishes it by tearing off her head. Sometime later, Deck returns to Thea, standing before his father with undeniable proof of his victory, Tessa's severed head. Even then, Nar refuses to acknowledge him, calling Deck a disgrace. He orders 2 guards to execute him on the spot. They barely have time to react. Deck strikes first, eliminating both with effortless speed. Nar then steps in himself, activating his camouflage to disappear from sight. But Deck adapts. He powers up the ship's engines, whipping the sand into a violent storm. The swirling dust reveals his father's outline. In a swift attack, Deck severs Nar's arm, ending the fight before it can truly begin. He traps him inside a containment cage, leaving him helpless. Deck drives his blade into his father's helmet, not to kill him, but to make a point. Nar removes the helmet and finally speaks, offering Deck a place in a clan if he submits and kneels. Deck refuses. He says he already has a clan, one he chose for himself. Before Nar can respond, a massive creature bursts in and crushes his head in a single brutal strike. As silence falls, Thea steps forward and congratulates Deck. He takes his father's cloak, claiming it as a symbol of what he has overcome. Just then, another ship descends from the sky. Deck looks up and calmly says that it belongs to his mother. And with that, this is the end of the movie. If you enjoyed this recap, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with your friends. Let us know your thoughts in the comments, and we'll see you in the next recap.